Have you ever wondered how the voices that once shook churches, filled stadiums, and even inspired rock and roll simply disappeared? Some were buried in unmarked graves, while others vanished from the spotlight without ever explaining why, leaving behind only stories, memories, and echoing recordings. They were once shining stars, guiding souls with their music, but now they exist only as faint shadows in the history of gospel music. They were pioneers, prophets, legends who changed the way we listen to and feel gospel music. But why, despite all their greatness, have some names been forgotten? What secrets lie behind their disappearance? In today's video, we'll uncover 25 gospel legends who quietly faded away, stories never told, and the people whose music once moved the hearts of millions. Leave a comment with 1 if you feel a connection to these legends, or 0 if you see it differently. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell because these stories are more than music. They are history, they are inspiration, and they are proof that these great voices never truly disappeared. They're just waiting to be remembered. Reverend James Cleveland was one of the solid pillars of gospel music, a man whose influence extended far beyond the pulpit and the choir. Born in 1931 on the south side of Chicago, he grew up in the sound of church choirs and hymns. Under the tutelage of Thomas A. Dorsey, Cleveland learned not only the art of gospel songwriting, but also the power of connecting music with faith. His raspy, raw voice defied all expectations. At a time when smooth melodies were celebrated, it became his greatest strength. Audiences felt every lyric as if heaven itself was speaking through him. In the 1950s and 1960s, Cleveland's collaborations with legendary figures like Aretha Franklin and the Caravans elevated his reputation, but his true legacy was cemented when he founded the Gospel Music Workshop of America in 1968. The annual gathering founded by Reverend James Cleveland became a landmark event, drawing thousands of singers, musicians, and composers. It created a solid platform for them not only to hone their talents, but also to spread gospel music globally. Under his visionary leadership, choirs not only flourished but also became a powerful force in worship, producing anthems that echo in churches to this day. It was that vision that reshaped the sound of gospel music, opening doors for countless artists to step into the spotlight. However, after Reverend Cleveland's death in 1991, controversies surrounding his personal life and finances erupted, leading to a series of lawsuits and difficult questions within the gospel community. These scandals still linger, raising many questions, but they cannot erase the fact that Cleveland's music had a profound impact, igniting a fire of passion and vision for the next generation. Have you ever wondered if the weight of scandal can unjustly overshadow a person's legacy, or if the music itself is the ultimate testament to their worth? Although Reverend James Cleveland no longer stands before the microphone, his arrangements, choirs, and groundbreaking vision continue to live on in every wave of worship music. Every Sunday morning, his spirit still echoes, continuing to influence churches and congregations, and his songs, though now silent, remain unforgettable. While the controversies may dim his light in the eyes of some, Reverend Cleveland's musical legacy remains the clearest testament to his greatness. Danny Bell Hall was never the type of singer who chased the spotlight. However, her voice had the power to move an entire room. Born in Pittsburgh in 1938, she grew up with a deep devotion to her faith, a devotion that permeated every note she sang. Her voice was gentle yet firm, soothing yet unwavering. Her breakthrough came in the 1970s when she joined Andre Crouch and the Disciples, a group that redefined contemporary gospel music. Alongside one of gospel music's most pioneering leaders, she quickly established herself with a tone that was both intimate and majestic. Soon after, she began her solo career, releasing beloved albums like This Moment and He is King. But it was her timeless song, Ordinary People, that was her anthem. What made Dani Bell even more remarkable was her openness about life's challenges. She spoke candidly about overcoming breast cancer at a time when such personal battles were rarely shared publicly. Her sincerity allowed listeners to see not just a singer, but a woman of faith who lived what she sang. By the late 1980s, her name appeared in headlines less often, and many wondered why her music was no longer on the radio as it once was. However, her absence from the spotlight never diminished her presence in life. When she passed away in 2000, the news came quietly, saddening many fans. To this day, her voice remains a gentle reminder that the gospel is most powerful when it comes from the soul. Indeed, Keith Pringle is a burst of energy in the gospel world, a man whose music not only carries the fire of the church, but also the heartbeat of the streets. Born in 1950, he was mentored by the great pastor James Cleveland, but quickly established his own unique style with a vibrant, youthful, and fresh feel. Unlike many of his peers who leaned towards traditional arrangements, Pringle brought a lively, almost electrifying style that introduced a new breeze to gospel music. In the 1980s, songs like Call Him Up and Perfect Peace became staple hymns in black churches across America. His voice, smooth yet powerful, effortlessly rises into falsetto, then drops to a rich emotional warmth that reassures the listener. He founded the Pentecostal community choir PCC, bringing a fresh dynamic sound to gospel choirs and inspiring future generations of worship leaders. He even ventured into broadcasting, particularly on the West Coast, helping bring gospel music to a younger audience, an audience that without him may not have pursued it. By the late 1980s, Keith Pringle's public presence began to fade. Unlike others, his departure was not marked by scandals. Instead, his retreat was quiet. Some believe he chose to focus on ministry, while others think he simply needed a break from the relentless demands of the industry. When he passed away in 1997, the gospel community was left in shock. Although his name may not be as widely recognized today, his influence lives on every time a gospel choir lifts their voices with passion. Keith Pringle may have left too soon, but the echoes of his music endure. Daryl Coley was the type of singer whose voice made listeners stop in their tracks. Born in Berkeley, California in 1955, he grew up immersed in music and quickly realized his extraordinary talent. Unlike many singers, Coley could do it all, soaring to operatic highs, sliding down into smooth, low notes, and delivering every lyric with raw, unfiltered emotion. When he sang, it wasn't just a performance, it was a journey of discovery. His career began humbly singing backup for gospel legends like Edwin Hawkins and Tremaine Hawkins. But it didn't take long for his talent to demand attention. His debut solo project, Just Daryl, 1986, solidified him as a key voice in contemporary gospel music. Next came He's Preparing Me, a song that remains a classic, blending jazz melodies with gospel faith. Coley made gospel music sophisticated yet accessible, showing that innovation could exist without losing its spiritual message. However, life tested him in ways that even his powerful voice couldn't always overcome. In the 1990s, Coley was diagnosed with diabetes, leading to serious complications, including temporary blindness. As his health declined, he made fewer public appearances, and his fans began to realize they hadn't heard from him in years. Have you ever felt the pain of realizing that one of your favorite voices has faded away before you even noticed? Despite his health struggles, Coley never lost his faith, and his later performances carried an even deeper resonance. When he passed away in 2016 at the age of 60, the gospel world mourned not only a tremendous loss, but also the silence that preceded it. Today, his recordings remind us that gospel at its peak isn't about perfection, it's about touching the soul. And Daryl Coley did just that every single time. Lashun Pace was a natural force in the gospel music world, a singer whose voice could move any church and reach straight into the soul. Born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1961, she was one of the famous Anointed Pace Sisters, a family group that always brought raw spiritual energy to every performance. Even in a group filled with powerful voices, Lashun stood out. Her vocal strength was unparalleled, deep, authoritative, and full of faith. Her solo career quickly confirmed her star power. Songs like "I Know I've Been Changed" became church anthems, sung at countless services, serving as a reminder of faith and resilience. Decades later, her single, "Act Like You Know," unexpectedly went viral on social media, introducing her powerful voice to a new generation. What made Lashun Pace unforgettable was not only her ability to reach notes that few could hit, but also how she brought a story and genuine emotion to every song. When she sang, it wasn't just music, it was the sharing of her life's experiences and struggles. But behind this extraordinary talent was a life filled with suffering and hardship. Lashun had to face serious health issues, including an enlarged heart, which made performing increasingly difficult. Despite this, she continued her music career with resilience, even though her body could no longer allow her to express all that she had. Another pain she endured was the loss of her daughter Xenia. The death of Xenia was not just a major tragedy in Lashun's life, but it left an indelible scar on her heart, making every song she sang even more poignant and profound. Although Lashun Pace continued to make appearances and contribute to music in her later years, her presence in the music community became less consistent. Health challenges led to fewer performances, and her fans began to notice that her appearances had become increasingly rare. In her final years, those who loved her recognized that she was battling illness and sometimes absent from significant events she had previously attended. Her absence raised concerns about her condition. When Lashun passed away in March 2022, the gospel community not only lost a great voice, but also a strong woman who had inspired generations. Lashun Pace may have left us, but her voice will forever serve as a reminder of the gospel's ability to carry both sorrow and hope in the same breath. Inez Andrews truly deserves the title of the Supreme Gospel Priestess, and once you hear her sing, you will understand why. Born in 1929 in Birmingham, Alabama, she became famous as a member of the legendary Caravans, one of the most influential gospel groups in history. Standing alongside icons like Albertina Walker and Shirley Caesar Andrews, made her mark with a voice that was both commanding and deeply soulful. Her sound carried great authority when she sang, almost like a sermon set to music rather than a performance. Her rendition of "Mary, Don't You Weep" remains one of the most beloved gospel performances, moving the hearts of listeners decades later. But Andrews was not only a singer, she was also a talented songwriter, composing many songs that nourished her ministry and made the pilgrimages unforgettable. Her dual talent helped her stand out in an era when women were rarely given the opportunity to shine as both singers and songwriters. As gospel music grew in prominence during the 1970s and 1980s, new styles and younger artists began to dominate the stage. However, Andrews never abandoned her traditional gospel roots, which also meant that she wasn't featured regularly on television or involved in award ceremonies like her contemporaries. This led to her being gradually forgotten by younger generations, even though her influence remained deeply embedded in the DNA of gospel music. Have you ever noticed that the architects of a music genre are sometimes the very ones forgotten by history? Andrews continued to perform at smaller events and serve her community, remaining steadfast in her musical message, even though she was not widely recognized. When she passed away in December 2012 at the age of 83, those who truly understood gospel music realized that one of the greatest voices in the genre had been silenced. Although her name may no longer be as prominent as before, her influence still echoes in the hearts of every gospel singer who dares to raise their voice with courage and sincerity. Andrews may have left us, but her contributions to gospel music will always be an integral part of the history of music, a reminder of the importance of preserving traditional values in a world that is constantly changing. Willie Neal Johnson was the type of gospel singer who could stir an entire congregation with just one note. Born in 1935 in Tyler, Texas, he is best known as the lead singer of the gospel band Keynotes, later renamed Willie Neal Johnson and the New Keynotes. His raspy, heartfelt voice carried the raw essence of traditional gospel music. And when he sang, you didn't just hear the music, you felt it deeply in your soul. With songs like, "Lord, You've Been So Good to Me," "Please Be Right," and "I Will Do What You Want Me to Do." Johnson turned every performance into a revival service. His voice wasn't polished in a commercial way, but that's what made it beautiful. It was soaked in sincerity. He didn't rely on stagecraft. His power came from authenticity and pouring his heart into the music. For many, his sound became the backdrop for Sunday mornings, especially in the small churches of southern towns. His voice not only touched the hearts of listeners, but also brought a sense of peace and a deep connection to faith. This made his music an indispensable part of the spiritual lives of many. But why do some voices, even those once beloved, fade from public memory faster than others throughout the 1970s and 1980s? Willie Neal Johnson, despite facing trials and hardships, built a loyal fan base. The signature songs of the gospel group he led became iconic, and his quartet rose to be one of the most respected groups in gospel history. His loyalty and sincerity in music created a lasting legacy, one that is not easily forgotten over time. His live performances were always lively, filled with cheers, claps, and tears, as if each concert was both worship and testimony. However, when he passed away in January 2001, gospel music lost more than just a singer, it lost a spark. Without his passionate presence, the group struggled to maintain the same energy, and over time, fewer young fans knew his name. Yet his influence still quietly endures. Groups like Lee Williams and the Spiritual QCs still carry the echoes of his style, proving that the spirit of Willie Neal Johnson lives on. He may no longer be widely recognized by the public, but for those who directly experienced his voice, he remains an unforgettable name. The story of Tim Green is one of quiet dedication, a man who devoted his entire life to gospel music, not for fame, but out of love for ministry. Born in North Carolina, he grew up in a family steeped in faith and music. Alongside his siblings, he formed the Greens, a renowned Southern gospel group celebrated for their heartfelt melodies and spiritually profound songs. Tim's voice was gentle, almost like a conversation drawing listeners in, as if he were sharing a personal story through every lyric. Songs like Glory Land, When I Kneel, The Blood Fell, and Christ is Born became mainstays in the Southern gospel community. But beyond singing, Tim was a talented songwriter and producer, penning hundreds of songs not only for the Greens, but also for countless other artists who might never have found their place without his guidance. He was the kind of musician who didn't seek the spotlight. His mission was to build others up, ensuring the message of gospel music reached as many hearts as possible. Don't you think the silent heroes of gospel, those working behind the scenes, deserve far more recognition than history usually gives them? Tragically, Tim's journey was cut short. In the early 2000s, he faced severe health issues that forced him to step away from performing. Unlike stars who depart amid dramatic announcements, Tim quietly disappeared from the scene, and many fans didn't even realize he was gravely ill. When news of his passing spread in 2004, those who loved his music were stunned. His death left a void not only within the Greens family, but also throughout the broader gospel community. While his name may no longer appear prominently in historical records, Tim Green's impact remains deeply embedded in gospel music. Every choir or singer who has performed one of his songs unknowingly continues his legacy, carrying his spirit forward in every note. Vanessa Bell. Armstrong's voice was like thunder wrapped in velvet, a seamless blend of raw gospel fire and the sophistication of soul. Born in 1953 in Detroit, she rose to prominence in the late 1970s and 1980s, quickly becoming one of the most recognized female voices in gospel music. Her breakthrough came with the song "Peace Be Still," a track that showcased her astonishing vocal range and solidified her commanding presence. The way she could soar to high notes and then descend into a husky, emotive tone made her performances unforgettable. Armstrong was one of the rare gospel singers who successfully bridged the gap between traditional hymns and contemporary music. Working closely with Thomas Whitfield, she brought a fresh sound that fused gospel authenticity with R&B influences. Albums like Chosen and Wonderful One made her a household name within gospel circles, and her fame extended beyond the church when she performed the theme song for the sitcom Amen. She even shared the stage with legends like Whitney Houston and Aretha Franklin, proving that her voice could transcend any genre. Have you ever noticed that some artists can make you feel as if you're witnessing your own life story, even though you've never met them? Despite her success, Vanessa's journey was far from easy. In the 2000s, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a debilitating disease that affected her ability to tour and perform. Around the same time, she endured the loss of her husband, compounding the physical and emotional toll. Her consistent presence in gospel music nearly disappeared from the public eye, with only occasional appearances serving as a reminder of the fiery passion she once carried so boldly. Yet Vanessa Bell Armstrong remains a beloved figure. Though quieter now, her music continues to inspire resilience, reminding us that even when life takes a toll on the body, the spirit can still rise and sing. Joe Ligon was a storm embodied in human form. His voice could shake the walls of any church and awaken the deepest emotions within the soul. Born in 1936 in Alabama, he grew up singing on cotton fields before finding his true calling in gospel music. In the 1950s, he became the passionate lead vocalist of the Mighty Clouds of Joy, a group that changed the entire landscape of gospel music. They didn't stand rigidly in suits like the quartets of the past. No, they brought movement, energy, and rhythm. Guitars, drums, and dance turned their performances into a spiritual revival, much like a gospel version of The Temptations. Ligon's powerful, soulful voice laid the foundation for some of the group's biggest hits, including Mighty High H and a brief Talking to Jesus section. His delivery wasn't about technical polish, it was about faith. When he sang, people felt every word as a testament to survival and belief. It wasn't just music, it was a living example of the strength of the human spirit. His voice wasn't just a performance, it was a proclamation of hope and perseverance. The soaring clouds of joy he created spread to places where few gospel artists had ever set foot before attracting new audiences and breaking barriers. His performances on the soulful journey not only captured hearts, but also earned him a Grammy, proving that gospel music could stand shoulder to shoulder with mainstream artists. This achievement highlighted the power of the gospel message and its ability to transcend the boundaries of traditional audiences. Have you ever witnessed a singer who seemed to pour every bit of pain, joy, and triumph from their lungs directly into you? Even as gospel music evolved in the 1980s and 1990s, Ligon remained the heart of the group, keeping their music rooted in tradition while still attracting new fans. But when he passed away in December 2016, it seemed the soul of the group had faded. The Mighty Clouds continued their efforts, but without Ligon's thunderous voice, that fire wasn't the same. While the younger generation may not yet know his name, the influence of Joe Ligon will live on every time gospel music dares to be bold, powerful, and deeply emotional. He didn't just sing, he made it explode. Frank Williams may not have had the loudest voice in gospel music, but he possessed a vision just as powerful. Born in 1947 in Smithdale, Mississippi, he began singing with his family group, the Jackson Southern Airs, where his smooth baritone and calm demeanor earned him great respect. However, his most significant contribution came later when he founded one of the longest-running organizations in gospel music, the Mississippi Mass Choir. In 1988, Williams gathered singers from across the state with a dream of forming a choir that would reflect both the heart of Mississippi and the soul of gospel music. Their debut album, Live at Jackson State University, shook the music industry. The album topped the Billboard Gospel charts for 45 consecutive weeks, an unprecedented achievement proving that gospel choirs could achieve commercial success without losing their spiritual depth. Under Williams's leadership, the choir presented songs like Near the Cross and I'll See You, in transforming Sunday worship into something that resonated globally. Can you imagine the courage it takes to step out from the shadow of a family group and build something completely new, leaving behind a legacy greater than oneself? Despite his growing influence, Frank Williams remained a humble leader. He was not an artist chasing fame. He was a shepherd guiding voices toward harmony. His calm soul balanced the powerful energy of the choir, creating a sound that moved both congregations and global audiences. But in March 1993, tragedy struck when Williams unexpectedly passed away at the age of 45. This news shocked the gospel community, especially as few knew he had been struggling with health issues. While the Mississippi Mass Choir continues to sing to this day, its foundation was laid by Frank Williams' vision and faith. His time was short, but his influence remains eternal. It serves as a reminder that leadership in gospel music is not always about standing in front of a crowd, but about lifting others up. Margaret Allison's name may not be mentioned as frequently today, but in her time she broke barriers that few women in gospel music dared to cross. Born in 1921 in McCormick, South Carolina, She carried with her a quiet strength that would one day reshape the gospel stage. In 1944, when most successful groups were led by men, Margaret formed the Angelic Gospel Singers, an all-female choir, proving that women could lead and dominate in the gospel world. Their sound was a pure traditional gospel blend with heartfelt vocals and songs that deeply touched the soul. Their breakthrough hit, "Touch Me, Lord Jesus," became a defining anthem. Have you ever noticed that the pioneers, the ones who open doors for others, are often the first to be forgotten by history? As gospel music evolved into flashier styles in the 1970s and 1980s, Allison and her group never chased trends. They remained faithful to their roots, which earned them loyalty, but also kept them out of the spotlight as the music industry changed. Younger audiences, drawn to contemporary gospel, often overlooked the pioneers who laid the foundation. When Margaret passed away in 2008, the Angelic Gospel Singers faded from the memories of many, despite their music once bringing worship to churches across the country. Cleophas Robinson, often referred to as the gospel music pastor, brought the gospel to life with the faith of a preacher and the fire of a singer. Born in 1932 in Mississippi, Robinson grew up in the church where his deep, resonant voice was both a gift and a calling. He wasn't just a singer, he was a pastor, a radio announcer, and a television personality, using every platform available to spread gospel music far and wide. By the 1960s, Robinson's ministry expanded beyond preaching. His recordings with Peacock Records introduced gospel fans to classics like Wrapped Up, Tied Up, Tangled Up, and praise from The Cleophas Robinson Show to Ghosts. Have you ever thought about how many pioneers helped bring gospel music to a mainstream audience long before streaming and social media made music so accessible to everyone? Hit like, subscribe, and comment below with your favorite gospel song so we can honor pioneering legends like Robinson and uncover the untold stories of gospel music. Despite his influence, Robinson's fame began to wane in the 1980s and 1990s. As contemporary gospel and newer worship styles became more popular, his traditional music was considered outdated by younger generations. However, Robinson never strayed from his roots. His focus was on ministry, not trends. When he passed away in 1998, many in the public didn't fully realize the extent of his contributions to gospel music, both as a performing artist and a mentor. While he may not always be mentioned in modern gospel conversations, Cleophas Robinson's legacy is undeniable. He bridged the worlds of preaching, singing, and broadcasting, ensuring that the gospel message reached far beyond the walls of the church. Long before Elvis shook his hips or Chuck Berry bent guitar strings, Sister Rosetta Tharpe was a pioneer. Born in 1915 in Cotton Plant, Arkansas, she grew up with her mother performing gospel music in traveling evangelistic shows. But it was when she strapped on an electric guitar and blended hymns with explosive riffs that music history quietly changed forever. With hits like Strange Things Happening. Every day, Rosetta became one of the first artists to combine the spirit of gospel with rebellious energy, a combination that would later shape rock and roll. Her performances were unlike anything audiences had seen before. She took the stage in her church attire guitar slung across her back, delivering music that was both holy and electrifying. She toured the world, inspiring countless musicians who would later be hailed as pioneers, including Johnny Cash, Little Richard, and Elvis Presley. However, despite their fame and recognition, Rosetta was often forgotten. Some within the church considered her too worldly, while the rock music industry viewed her as too gospel-oriented. Rosetta was not only a pioneer in blending gospel with rock and roll, but she was also an artist who broke cultural and social boundaries, at a time when women and African Americans were often pushed to the margins of the music industry. She was the first to bring a fusion of gospel music and contemporary elements, creating a unique and innovative style that was not easily accepted at the time. Her contributions not only changed the way music was performed, but also opened doors for other artists to break out of old molds, creating and transcending social barriers. When she passed away in 1973, Rosetta's health had severely declined. She lost a leg to diabetes and was buried in an unmarked grave, a heartbreaking end for such a great artist who had given so much to music. Although she deserved to be honored throughout her life, she was forgotten by history. No one in the music industry truly recognized her at the time. It wasn't until 2018 that Rosetta was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a recognition that came too late, leaving many feeling regretful for not honoring her while she was still alive. However, even though she was not there to witness this recognition, she is now remembered as the godmother of rock and roll, an icon, not only of gospel music, but also a symbol of boldness and unceasing creativity in the arts. Sister Rosetta Tharpe may not have lived to witness her well-deserved crown, but today she is remembered as the godmother of rock and roll. Her boldness and talent remind us that gospel music always has the power to shake the world. Her musical legacy has not only influenced artists in the rock world, but has also made deep marks on modern music culture. Her music paved the way for a new generation of artists, breaking barriers and promoting the fusion of different music genres. She was not just an icon of gospel or rock and roll, but also a woman who changed the way we perceive and experience music, reminding us that even though society may not always acknowledge it, great contributions will forever endure and impact future generations. Brother Joe May was once hailed as the thunderous voice of the Midwest, and this title perfectly suited him. Born in 1912 in Mon, Mississippi, he possessed a powerful and commanding voice that could fill an entire room without the need for a microphone. His voice wasn't just loud. It was filled with emotion, faith, and a deep spiritual energy that made the congregation tremble. When he sang, it was as though a storm had entered the church, shaking hearts and uplifting souls. His breakthrough came with "Circa," song that became his signature. Each of his performances felt more like a plea from heaven than mere entertainment. Joe May was discovered by Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who recognized his rare talent and took him on tour. This partnership not only expanded his audience, but also brought him into the realm of specialized record labels, one of the most important gospel labels of the 1940s and 1950s. His records sold incredibly well in the gospel market, making him a household name among followers who craved the intensity he brought to his music. Unlike some of his peers, Joe May didn't transition to secular music, although doing so could have brought him mainstream fame. He remained loyal to gospel music, faithful to the tradition that had shaped him. But as trends changed in the 1960s and younger, more prominent artists emerged, his name gradually faded into obscurity. When he passed away in 1972, many younger fans didn't even know he was still performing. Joe may not be remembered by everyone, but for those who heard him sing, his voice is unforgettable. A thunderclap once shook gospel to its very core. Pastor Milton Brunson may not have been the most prominent name in gospel music, but his influence is undeniable. Born in 1929 in Chicago, Illinois, Brunson had the gift of transforming a choir into an instrument of power and praise. While solo stars often captured all the attention, he quietly yet effectively built one of the most respected gospel choirs in history, the Thompson Community Singers, affectionately known as Tommy. Under Brunson's leadership, Tommy became a national force. Their repertoire included unforgettable classics like "Available to You There Is No Failure in God and It's Gonna Be All Right." These were not just songs. They were proclamations of faith, uplifting believers through difficult times. Brunson's genius lay in his ability to blend the depth of traditional gospel with fresh modern arrangements, making the choir vibrant and contemporary without losing its sacred core. Under his guidance, the Tommies became a training ground, laying the foundation for the careers of future gospel stars like Ricky Dillard, Darius Brooks, and Jesse Dixon. It's fascinating how some of the greatest leaders work in the background, quietly shaping voices that will eventually overshadow their own. While Brunson's name may not always have been in the spotlight, his dedication to excellence earned him national recognition, including a Grammy Award in 1995 for Through God's Eyes. However, his story, like many other gospel legends, ended in bitterness. Pastor Brunson passed away in 1997, and without his guiding hand, the Tommy music gradually slowed. The gospel music industry itself was shifting, as choirs lost favor with the rise of solo artists and praise and worship music taking center stage. Yet his influence still remains. Every time a gospel choir lifts its voice, they echo the standards he set. Pastor Milton Brunson may not have sought fame, but his work has left an everlasting mark on gospel music, proving that true greatness often lies in the harmony of others. Clara Ward was not just a gospel singer. She was a pioneer who brought elegance and performance artistry to a genre often confined within the walls of the church. Born in 1924 in Philadelphia, she grew up under the guidance of her mother Gertrude Ward, and together they formed the famous Ward Singers. At a time when gospel music was largely traditional and reserved, Clara dared to make it vibrant, stylish, and polished, captivating audiences not only in the U.S. but across Europe. Her voice was powerful, pure, and commanding. But what set her apart was her presence. She didn't just sing hymns, she performed them. Dressed in elegant gowns, Clara confidently led the singers in her region, offering audiences an experience of gospel that transcended the ordinary. Her recordings and performances in the 1940s and 1950s inspired countless artists, including Aretha Franklin and Patti Leal, who later hailed Clara as a major influence. However, her boldness was not without opposition. Many in the gospel community criticized her for bringing music into nightclubs and theaters, accusing her of making gospel too worldly. Yet Clara maintained that gospel was for everyone, no matter where it was sung. Do you think taking gospel outside the confines of the church helped preserve it, or did it risk weakening its sacred power? Despite her groundbreaking contributions, Clara faced health and financial struggles in her later years. She suffered several strokes and passed away in 1973 at the age of 48, leaving a deep sense of loss for one of the most captivating pioneers of gospel music. Though often overlooked in modern discussions about the history of gospel music, Clara Ward's bold approach helped redefine gospel. She broke through barriers influenced by legends and proved that worship music could be just as vibrant as any other genre. Deeply spiritual, her voice and vision continue to resonate with every artist who dares to blend faith with fearless performance. Thomas Whitfield was hailed as the master of gospel music, and this title is truly fitting. Born in Detroit in 1954, Whitfield was a prodigy whose talents went far beyond singing. He was a pianist, composer, arranger, and choir director with creative skills that shaped the sound of modern gospel music. While many artists found success as performers, Whitfield thrived as a creator, crafting rich harmonies, intricate arrangements, and unforgettable melodies that ushered gospel music into a new era. Along with the Whitfield Company, he created timeless classics like Hallelujah, I Shall Wear a Crown, and his sound, rich like an orchestra, and refined, blended the soul of gospel with the classical techniques he mastered. His innovation brought a new voice to gospel choirs and inspired singers like Vanessa Bell Armstrong and Yolanda Adams, both of whom grew under his mentorship. It's remarkable how some of the most influential names in music prefer to stand behind others, creating greatness from the shadows. Despite his extraordinary talent, Whitfield often worked quietly behind the scenes, arranging for others and pushing them to shine. However, his work earned respect from all corners of the music world. He became a standard of excellence in the gospel genre, admired not only for his talent, but also for his humility. Sadly, his life ended tragically. In 1992, at just 38 years old, he passed away from a heart attack, while still in the peak of his creative years. Though he never achieved the mainstream fame of some of his peers, Thomas Whitfield's influence remains firmly etched in the world of gospel music today. His arrangements continue to be sung in choirs around the world, and his impact lives on every time a hymn rises bolder, deeper, and more profound. Whitfield proved that gospel is not just music. It is an art form deserving of the highest respect. Zenobia Jeter possessed a voice seemingly destined for greatness, a warm, emotional voice that effortlessly transitioned between gentleness and strength. Born in South Carolina, she was raised in the gospel tradition where her natural talent quickly made her stand out. In the early 1980s, she attracted attention with her emotionally charged performances, her sound carrying both youthful promise and deep spiritual depth. Unlike many other singers who rely solely on power, Jeter's voice contained subtle nuances. Every word was carefully crafted, full of emotion. Her shift to R&B seemed like the next logical step. Signing with Elektra Records, she released songs like All of My Love, showcasing her ability to balance the sincerity of gospel with the polish of mainstream music. Fans who had heard her duet with her husband, R&B singer Glenn Jones, believed the two were on their way to becoming a powerhouse couple in music. Together, they displayed both artistry and harmony, and their voices blended perfectly on stage and in recordings. Have you ever followed an up-and-coming star and thought they would last forever, only to wonder why their shine suddenly faded, for reasons that were never fully explained? Joya's solo career never flourished as expected. There were no public scandals, no serious repercussions. She simply began to fade from the spotlight. Some speculate that she chose to focus on family life, while others believe the demands of the industry caused too much personal toll. By the late 1980s, her name rarely appeared in music headlines, leaving fans with more questions than answers. Though her career seemed to quietly fade, those who remember Zenobia Jeter know her voice made a lasting impression. Her story remains one of the enduring mysteries of gospel and R&B music, a reminder that sometimes even the brightest flames are extinguished before the world can fully recognize just how brightly they burned. Myrna Summers is one of the gospel legends whose name may not dominate mainstream conversations, But her voice and leadership reshaped the sound of the Black church in the 1980s and 1990s. Born in 1949 in Washington, D.C., she possessed a deep, soul-stirring voice that made each song feel like a sermon. Unlike singers who chased the spotlight, Summers focused on the music, igniting passion and faith in every choir she led. Her career soared with unforgettable hits like "God Gave Me a Song," "Give Me Something to Hold On To," and "So Much to Be Grateful For." These were not just popular songs. They were hymns of hope sung in churches across the country. Her voice was powerful, but also deeply personal, as if she were standing in the midst of the very struggles the lyrics described. Her works earned her a Grammy and numerous prestigious awards, solidifying her place among the greatest gospel artists. Have you ever heard a choir so powerful that you felt the walls of the church might crumble under the weight of their spirit? She was also a pioneering choir director, helping to shape the emotional sound that defined gospel at the turn of the 20th century. Under her leadership, choirs didn't just sing, they testified. But as gospel shifted towards solo stars and contemporary worship styles in the 2000s, Summers gradually stepped back from the spotlight. However, she didn't disappear. Instead, she continued to serve faithfully as the music pastor at Reed Temple in Maryland, mentoring new generations and keeping gospel music rooted in its traditional strength. While she may be quieter now, her influence remains. Every time a choir erupts with undying passion, the legacy of Myrna Summers is felt. She reminds us that true gospel power isn't about fame. It's about transforming lives through music. Marvin Gaye did not arrive in Los Angeles at the end of the 1960s as a star. He arrived as a man carrying the weight of failure from Detroit pockets nearly empty and a voice not yet prominent enough to sustain himself. Every note and every Motown dream seemed to linger in his memory, but they could not shield him from the harshness of a cold and ruthless city where past ambitions and fame held no value. Los Angeles did not care who had once stood behind the microphone, nor did it care about stories of talent or passion. Here, everyone had to fight for survival, and there was no room for weakness or inexperience. Marvin was not welcomed with music contracts or invitations to record in studios. Instead, he was met with unspoken propositions, scrutinizing eyes and dim, risky opportunities. The doors that opened did not lead to the dazzling light of recording studios or tracks that would move the world. They led to dimly lit apartments where people paid for his presence, seeking a fleeting intimacy, a momentary sensation, or simply a void they wished to fill. The shape of a musical legend began to take form, each note, each lyric a testament to resilient life, a belief that true talent would eventually find its light even if that light had to flicker through loneliness and hardship. It is said that Marvin, in his worn suit, would appear in the lavish penthouses of older patrons. He entered like a melancholic jazz melody, carrying with him the scent of cigarettes and the sweat of shabby practice rooms. A friend once remarked that he had strange appointments with certain devoted fans. They paid to be near him, even if only for a few hours. These encounters were not dates, they were transactions. Transactions in which every touch, every smile carried a clear and unmistakable price. On stage, Marvin was the embodiment of charm and romance, a living symbol of soul music, where every note resonated like a promise of love, passion, and the life everyone longed for. He made audiences believe that he possessed it all: a dazzling career, an irresistible appearance, rare talent, and the kind of love many could only dream of. The applause, the shimmering lights, and the admiring gazes seemed to confirm that Marvin stood atop the musical world, untouchable and flawless. Yet when the stage lights dimmed, that glamorous veneer crumbled, revealing a painful truth. Marvin was just a young black man struggling with loneliness, poverty, and needs that no one could see. Every song about free love, passion, and genuine connection was in reality a dream he had never truly reached outside the stage, a longing to fill the emptiness in his soul that the spotlight could never conceal. Outside the spotlight, he had to sign contracts with those who were wealthier and more powerful, not to gain fame, but simply to secure a place to sleep for the night, a meal for the next day, just to keep living and keep singing. He didn't sell his voice. He sold himself every fragment of his life, every hope, every piece of his soul, in order to survive in a cold world where musical dreams came at a cost of sacrifices only those who lived it could understand. Rumors about those secret nights never fully disappeared, even as his fame grew. They lingered quietly like a background melody that only the perceptive could hear. Many believed that songs like Sexual Healing or Let's Get It On were simply invitations to pleasure and liberation. But those close to Marvin understood that they were also sighs, the inner voice of a man who had once had to trade intimacy just to survive. There was no official confirmation from him nor any denial. Marvin chose to remain silent, letting the past sink beneath the glittering spotlight that the public so eagerly celebrated. They saw only the radiant smile, the white suit, and the flawless dance moves. But those who had truly witnessed knew better. They remembered him sitting in silence with a glass of liquor, listening to the phone ring, and stepping out the door as if it were another performance. Each call could be yet another physical contract he could not refuse. And the painful truth was that the love he had once poured from the depths of his heart into every song had now become a commodity to be exchanged. Marvin chose silence, letting his painful past sink beneath the brilliance the public adored. On stage, they saw only the radiant smile, the perfect white suit, and the polished dance moves, an immaculate image of a legendary soul star. Each dazzling stage light only served to heighten the contrast between the outward adoration and the silent obsessions within, making Marvin's tragedy more profound and unforgettable than ever. In Los Angeles, where the lights never go out, Marvin moved in and out of luxurious apartments with pockets full of money but an empty heart. He knew all too well the injustices within these arrangements, understood the roles his skin color, circumstances, and limitations played. To many, he was merely a fleeting adventure, a novelty purchased for a few hours of thrill. But for him, it was the only way to survive without being crushed by the unforgiving pulse of the city. It wasn't part of his career yet. It became an inseparable part of who he was, a part that Marvin could never truly forget. But those who witnessed his life beyond the stage lights knew better, understanding that the smile was merely a facade, a mask honed over years of experience. As his music career began to soar, those nights of transactions gradually disappeared, at least in the material sense. Yet the memories were not so easily erased. They lingered in the way he sang, in the distant gaze he cast over the crowd. Notes that seemed sweet carried an unspoken sorrow impossible to name. Marvin became an icon, but one layered with contradictions. That voice, that appearance, all were forged from an intricate blend of light and shadow. They remembered him sitting silently in the small room, a glass of liquor in hand, listening to the phone ring with the steady rhythm of an inescapable fate. Marvin Gaye was a legend, not just because of his classic hits, but because of the complex life behind the scenes. He lived between two worlds, one where the audience cheered, and one where he had to sell himself to survive. His songs bore witness to both realities at once, a longing for love and a deep, soulful sigh. Every time he sang, he recounted a part of his life without ever speaking a word. And perhaps it is precisely this that made Marvin Gaye a voice not only beautiful, but also filled with pain. Paul S. Morton Sr. is a name that resonates not only in gospel music, but also in church leadership. Born in 1950 in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and raised in Detroit, Michigan, he became one of the most influential pastors and singers of his generation. Morton's ministry was never confined to the pulpit. His talent lay in combining the power of preaching with the emotional resonance of music. In the early 1990s, he made history by founding the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship, a movement that combined the structure of traditional Baptistism with the spirit and energy of Pentecostal worship. It spread across the country, transforming the way thousands of churches approached praise, prayer, and music, creating a new wave in spiritual life that few could have anticipated. While his sermons deeply inspired congregations, awakening their souls and guiding them toward profound spiritual values, Morton's music acted as an extended arm, amplifying that influence into every corner of the community. Songs like Let It Rain Bow Down and Worship Him and Your Best Days quickly became staples in worship services where gentle sincerity blended perfectly with powerful prayers, conveying messages of hope, forgiveness, and steadfast faith. His singing was more than a performance. It was like a direct conversation with God, allowing listeners to experience a rare sense of divine presence and closeness, as if every note and every lyric were guiding their souls toward spiritual light. Through Morton's music teachings and delivery, worship services became more than mere rituals. They became profound experiences where attendees could find comfort, a sense of connection with the community, and a faith strengthened more powerfully than ever before. Have you ever felt a song so saturated with prayer that it no longer seemed like music, but more like a direct conversation with heaven? While his voice touched the hearts of millions, Morton eventually began to step back from the spotlight. By the late 2010s, he announced his retirement, no longer serving full-time as a pastor, instead focusing on mentoring young leaders and supporting the next generation of ministers. Meanwhile, his son, P.J. Morton, built his own career as a Grammy-winning R&B and soul artist, proving that music had become deeply ingrained in the Morton family legacy. Mahalia Jackson was not just a gospel singer. She was the voice of a movement. Born in 1911 in New Orleans, Louisiana, she grew up in poverty singing hymns in church while cleaning homes to make ends meet. Her warm, mezzo-soprano voice quickly became a gift she shared with the world. By the 1930s, Mahalia's singing had turned simple church facades into sacred sanctuaries. By the 1940s, she was recording songs that would forever transform gospel music. Her breakthrough came with the 1947 album Move On Up a Little Higher, which sold over 1 million copies, a feat unprecedented for gospel music at that time. Hits like Faded and How I Got Over cemented her status as the Queen of Gospel. But Mahalia's legacy went far beyond the pews of the church. She became the voice of the civil rights movement, singing at rallies, marches, and even at the 1963 March on Washington, standing alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When King delivered his iconic I Have a Dream speech, it was Mahalia who urged him just before, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." Have you ever heard a voice so commanding that it sounded both like a prayer and a battle cry for justice? Despite her international fame, Mahalia never strayed from her gospel roots. She performed at Carnegie Hall, toured the world, and sold millions of records. Yet she refused to sing secular music, even under pressure from the music industry. In 1972, she passed away at the age of 60, leaving behind a world forever changed by her powerful and emotive voice. Mahalia Jackson was more than a singer. She embodied gospel music itself, a voice of faith, hope, and comfort for broken hearts. Although younger audiences today may not always know her name, her influence persists strongly in every note, every hymn echoing through churches, concert halls, and even quiet performances in local communities. Mahalia Jackson proved that gospel music was not just music for Sunday mornings. It was a force capable of moving nations, stirring the deepest emotions, and healing wounded souls. Behind every inspired hymn, every united choir, and every triumphant solo were individuals who devoted their lives to gospel, dedicating their youth to spreading messages of faith and hope. Yet as time flows on, the names of many of these contributors have faded from memory, making room for enduring legends like Mahalia Jackson, while also reminding us that every voice, every heart devoted to music leaves an indelible mark on history. From the resounding cries for justice of Mahalia Jackson to the mysterious disappearance of Dolores Honey, these stories remind us that greatness can sometimes be fragile. But the question is, do we, the listeners, bear any responsibility for letting these legends vanish without a trace? Comment 1. If you believe we have a responsibility to these legends, or 0 if you think the past is only meant to be remembered. If you love untold stories and want to explore more extraordinary figures in history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to join us in upcoming videos where legends continue to echo through time. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.